This episode of 60 Miles from Anywhere talks about a morning in Dublin, Ireland. It's an unvarnished, unbiased look at my experience in the city. I hope you enjoy. Also, if you like what you've been hearing on my site, please comment on my website, 60milesfromanywhere.com, where you're also going to find stories on my blog, as well as insights about creative writing. My fiction is available on Amazon.com. The book I wrote is called Song of the Cinder, and it would make a great holiday or birthday present to that lover of fantasy, alternate history, or horror in your life. If you like what you've heard, your donation to support this podcast and my website are always appreciated with my Buy Me a Coffee link. I'm also an affiliate with Origin USA, a company that makes boots, jeans, martial arts gear, and all sorts of other things that are 100% American-made. Click the link on my website and use the code Harris10 for your 10% off purchase coupon. Let's begin with a September morning in Dublin. Street photography and Bakery 41. A seagull investigates a broken umbrella which sits at the foot of the statue of Thomas More. The night before was rough. Sleeping on an unfamiliar bed in a strange city is one thing, but share the room with a dozen strangers who are snoring, coughing, and talking in their sleep is another, especially in the wake of a pandemic. I'm still not used to people, and even less comfortable with breathing their air. I haven't slept in days, not only from the fitful red-eye flight over the Atlantic, but also because insomnia is my superpower. After only a few hours of sleep, I decided to get up. The sky was already becoming a brighter shade of gray, and I could hear the sound of seabirds on the river. A smooth transition from the cackling laughter, fighting, and breaking glass that finally ended only a few hours ago. On the street, shop owners are up early, replenishing their kegs of beer, unloading cases of groceries for the kitchen, and sweeping up the aftermath of the party that never ends in Temple Bar. Tourists are inside sleeping it off, while the locals climb onto buses and trains, braving the damp morning air and slick streets. The city is a mix of industrial, turn-of-the-last-century, and earlier architecture, peppered throughout a cityscape of modern buildings of glass and steel. Many businesses have closed down, leaving the ghostly remains of old signs and artwork painted onto their faces, fading more with every rain. Seagulls and seabirds bicker, and the remains of last night's events are washed down the gutters to the polluted River Liffey. This early in the morning, most of the shops aren't open yet, not even for breakfast. As I skirt the edge of Trinity College campus, photographing early morning Dublin street life, I find a place that is open, a bakery named Bread 41. With my hat turned backwards, I'm in photographer mode, and what I see through the glass is irresistible to my eye. Inside are rows of baked rolls, pastries, croissants, and racks of bread cooling. As I stand on the sidewalk, taking photos, a man walks past with his hood drawn up tight against the drizzle. "Go inside, man. You know you want to." So I take his advice. A young woman with gray eyes and a sharp Louise Brooks bob smiles at me when I enter. The scent of fresh baked bread and brewing coffee hits me. I hear the music of teaspoons against ceramic mugs, and the space where the breath of the espresso machine meets the gasp of chilly air every time someone new comes in through the door. "I saw you outside," she says, pantomiming my attempts at photography. "I hope you don't mind," I say. "Not at all. There was more out a little while ago. Everything is going quick today, so you'd better hurry if you want to get any more pictures." The idea of taking pictures left my brain the moment I walked through the door and felt the wave of warm, bread-scented air wash over me. It has been years since I've been inside a real bakery. Maybe since my part-time job in college when I cleaned one up in the afternoons. No amount of angel food cake sludge stuck to pans could kill my love for freshly baked bread. I thank her and set down my bag and start taking pictures inside, giving customers plenty of room as I take shots. With the gnawing in my stomach, I order at the counter. A steeping cup of loose-leaf tea comes with sugar and a small pitcher of Irish milk, which looks more like cream. A pain au chocolat and a sausage roll, which is the savory cousin of the former. Because Bakery 41 is celebrating their 4th birthday, the woman hands me a gift bag containing a custard-filled cruffin with rainbow candy sprinkles. I stuff it into my pack for later. The much-hyped book. COVID changed the landscape of travel. Touchless menus and ticket ordering, from trains to museums, make using data and smartphones essential. 3 years ago, when I visited the UK, international data was wildly expensive. I was limited to using my smartphone at whatever restaurant, store, or museum I happened to be visiting. My cellular service now has a great perk, which is international data for only about $13 a day. I get the same unlimited data and calling as I would get back home. Otherwise, I wouldn't be getting any data at all, unless I was at the hostel. At Trinity College, I scan the QR code outside to download their app and pick up tickets for the 9 a.m. entrance tour. Electronic tickets are the only way to get in now. To reach the Book of Kells, you must pass through a gallery where its pages have been blown up into 10-foot-tall murals plastered onto entire walls. The monastic history of early Ireland is detailed, as well as the explanation of how vellum is made and used in these kinds of manuscripts. Dyes, pigments, all of it. Up a darkened stairway, you enter the chamber where the book is kept. A security guard, almost as ancient, stands by to make sure you obey the cardinal rule of absolutely no photography. The book is under glass, lit by overhead lighting, and open only 1 page per day. It's a lot smaller than I expected. For having been made out of the hides of 30 calves, I wonder how much smaller cattle were back then. It doesn't do the hype at the beginning, or the €1850 entrance fee any justice. I haven't felt a feeling of tourist letdown this bad since visiting the Birdcage Theater in Tombstone, Arizona. The long library with its marble busts of the likes of Aristotle, the harp of Brian Boru, spiral staircases, ladders on bookcases and alcoves, and 65 yards of books make the fee worth your while. There's also a facsimile of the Book of Kells that you can photograph. At least it's turned to a different page. The gift shop follows next, where images on other pages of the Book of Kells are emblazoned on coffee mugs, t-shirts, keychains, and half a dozen books about the Book of Kells. The tourist traps are easy to pick out. Anything with a gift shop at the beginning and the end is your first clue. I walk around Trinity College campus and back toward the Temple Bar area, taking more pictures as I wind my way through the streets and alleys. Round every turn is a different market or shop. Restaurants and cafes beckon to me with their aromas. I've been walking for the last 4 hours and hungry again. My legs ache from a combination of sitting in airplanes for 14 hours and walking several miles around the city for the last 24 hours. I finish off the morning with the obligatory full Irish breakfast at a cafe. I suspect the good cafes are the ones the men in the high-vis jackets are coming out of, with tea and sausage rolls to go. I realize that black pudding also comes in white, and both are delicious. Sausages, streaky bacon, and brown bread with butter, eggs, fried tomatoes, and sautéed mushrooms. They're a carnivore's dream, and a flat white coffee to wash it all down. Aside from the brightly painted pubs and bars of the city center, you don't have to scratch very deep below to find the darker side of Dublin. At the statue of Molly Malone, with her breasts polished from the good luck touch of tourists, I watch as 3 people come into my viewfinder, sharing a plastic water bottle they are using as a makeshift crack pipe. The morning rains and cleanups wash away repurposed vape pens, needles, and other paraphernalia from the city, where the party just never quits. I see more of the same, nearly indifferent to the guards that patrol the narrow streets in their yellow and black high-vis coats. The homeless take their place on the Halfpenny Bridge and the other ways to cross the River Liffey, begging for loose change in a plastic economy. It resonates with the homeless crisis back home, where tent cities have filled parks and the land just off the interstates, but not yet quite to that scale. Somewhere between breakfast and the upcoming Jameson's Distillery tour, I get turned around, passing by the same narrow alleyways and twisted cobble streets over and over again. The George Street Arcade, Leo Burdock's Fish and Chips, barbecue, pubs and bars, souvenir shops and sweaters. Running like the background in an old Hanna-Barbera cartoon on a loop until I finally find the river again and head west and into the afternoon. Afternoon in Dublin. Dublin city centre is just beginning to wake up, and I make my way towards the Jameson's tour and tasting. With the next tour about to begin at 2 p.m., I have some time. I start off by crossing the Halfpenny Bridge to the north bank of the river and thread my way through the streets on my way to the old Jameson's Distillery. Along the way are coffee shops, Chinese takeaway restaurants, bookstores, and other places to shop. I find myself stuck behind a group of young people, already lit up from an early morning of pre-gaming the pubs. I fall back so I don't crowd them on the street, taking my time to look at the old industrial buildings and businesses along the way. The open bays of O'Malley's Fruit and Veg, where onions and cabbages wait for delivery in their crates, the red brick, the glass and steel, and the gray limestone, capped with ersatz angles of modern architecture. As tired as I am from the last few days, everything mixes together in just a blur. At the Jameson's building, there is a horse and buggy waiting out front full of tourists, and the gates on Bow Street. Inside, I find the box office and I purchase my ticket. 16 euros gets me into the tour. I have some time to burn, so I go back out to the street, and my feet take me to a place called the Irish Linen House. The owner and proprietor of the Irish Linen House has been carrying on a tradition passed down through his family for generations. All the work is done in this one building, from the napkins and table runners to the beautiful wall hangings with ancient Celtic symbols and designs. He tells me that some of their pieces are on display at the Book of Kells exhibit, with patterns that were taken directly from the book. He shows me a few in the shop, and I immediately recognize them from that morning, which already seems so far away. Our conversation verges into the dark years of the pandemic lockdowns, and he tells me that they almost closed up shop. Luckily, they were able to retool their operation and start making linen face masks for the Dublin hospitals, which were experiencing the same shortages as we had in the U.S. They were able to hire more people and move the old cast iron machines outside, under tents where they kept working. Lots of businesses in Dublin weren't so lucky, he tells me. When I ask him for any recommendations what to see, he tells me to check out the Brazen Head, which was Dublin's oldest pub. I thank him for his time and go on to meet the tour at the Jameson's building, surrounded by artifacts from the distillery. I try not to stand too close to anybody. The humidity of the city and my walking around everywhere has me sweating, and I'm pretty sure my shirt smells like an old sock by now. I'm soaked through with sweat, and my feet hurt from walking everywhere. Old bottles and barrels, pictures on the wall indicate the pedigree of the Jameson's family. Below, the bar bustles with people who had just been let out from the previous tour. The tour began, and our guide bubbled with charisma. She asked everyone where they were from, made small talk, and delivered her lines with an almost offhanded boredom. Inside the next room is a series of work tables, a hands-on, nose-on demonstration of what goes on in the process of making world-famous whiskey. She invites us to spray 2 types of whiskey onto 2 paper strips and smell the difference between a copper pot still and a column still. The copper pot whiskey was aromatic, almost sweet, while the column still smelled like absolutely nothing. She told us about how lots of large distilleries use column distillation to get more ethanol out of the mash, with the result being almost tasteless and odorless. The perfume from the batch being the result of blending it with copper distilled whiskey, oaking, and other additives. During the pandemic, Jameson's Distillery also retooled their system too. They started making hand sanitizer, and outside of the first room they invited us to try the sanitizer that smelled exactly like copper pot distilled whiskey. It was worth the €16 just to be able to smell and taste the difference between the different kinds of whiskey made by Jamesons. I could now distinguish a sherry cask-aged whiskey from an oak barrel-aged whiskey. I almost wished I'd paid the €60 just to do the mixology course. At the end of the tour, I get my free drink, a double neat whiskey. As I sipped my drink, I realized that a lot of people left their complimentary coupons, so I grabbed a couple and went back into line. Across from me, at a table, sits a woman about my age. I noticed she had been on my tour too. I remember she was the one talking about staying at the hostel Generator, which is attached to the Jameson's building. It used to be the coal-powered generator for the factory. I remember, too, that she was from Alabama. The drawl in her accent was very subtle, but present. She sits alone at a table, wearing a frown, nursing her whiskey, pretending to read her tour brochure and not notice the crowd. She has the look of someone who isn't used to being on her own. She seems apprehensive to be in a crowded bar without anyone to talk to. I consider going over to say hello, but then I don't. Instead, I go and get another free drink. Halfway through that drink, I notice she's gone. It's just as well. The details are hazy on how I got to the Brazen Head, since my own head is pretty brazen by now and swimming from 3 neat whiskeys and a Dublin mule. Outside the Brazen Head, a young woman approaches me. She is pretty, with nearly black hair and steel blue eyes, wearing a black crop top and leather jacket. The moment she speaks, I can see that she's missing a lot of teeth. She's animated, twitchy, and shaking like she's jonesing for a fix. She asks me for a few euros so she can catch a train across town, and throws me a deadly look when I tell her I have no change. It's no lie. I haven't had to get any actual currency this whole trip since everything runs on credit cards. It seems like I'm not the only tourist these days without extra change. I duck back into the pub, which is packed almost shoulder to shoulder with American tourists waiting for tables, and I wait her out. She follows after another group, and I'm able to head out again. I find Dublin Castle by a back street that curves around the exterior. Victorian-era bars on the windows indicate that it was once used for a prison. The yard opens up to a green with exhibit halls filled with artwork and a docent who smiles as I walk in. Something about the castle still evokes a feeling of dread. I wonder how many political prisoners were shot on these grounds, first in the Easter Rising, and then later during the Irish Civil War and subsequent uprisings that would occur. The building feels oppressive, claustrophobic. None of the Irish I have encountered talk about those times, but you can feel the shadow of it, no matter how pretty they make the gardens. By now it is raining again. Not the damp mist of before, but a heavy, steady rain. I duck into a coffee shop and watch the people pass by on the sidewalk until it subsides. I drink my Americano by the window, check my social media, jumping off the Wi-Fi to touch base with some people back home. I upload some pictures from my camera. Important adult stuff I've been neglecting. I check my train tickets to take me to Galway in the morning, and I start planning the next day for my walk west along the river with a full pack in the morning. I banter a little bit with the baristas, who carry with them a demeanor I'm very familiar with. Friendly, but exhausted by the influx of tourists who just keep coming and just keep talking. It reminds me a lot of the tourist towns back home. Steamboat, Estes Park, Glenwood Springs. Everyone just waiting to clock out so they can go home to their shitty apartments and not be on. In spite of its actual age, Dublin is coming off as a very young city. And with my aching legs and swimming head, I'm feeling very old today. I'm eager to see what else Ireland is waiting to be discovered. That night, I indulge myself in some more people watching and warm myself up at a pho restaurant with a piping hot bowl of soup and Vietnamese coffee. Before my second night of sleeping on that hard mattress in a room full of strangers, I find myself alone in the commons room, eating the cruffin from Bread 41 I've had in my pack all day. Looking through my pictures, finding comfort in my solitude, and a little nervous for what the next day might bring.